Hey everyone, my name is Claire, I'm 34. 2 years ago, my life collapsed. And now I'm happier than ever, but the price I paid was my naivety. Let's start from the beginning. I met my first husband, Mark, in 2015. I was 25, had just finished my residency in pediatrics, and was working at a small clinic in Austin, Texas. Mark was 4 years older, worked as a financial analyst at a large corporation. We met through a horrible blind date set up by my roommate. I showed up in stretched-out sweatpants and a messy bun because I'd just finished a 24-hour shift. I was an hour late. Mark didn't leave. He just sat there, drinking water, reading a book. I immediately thought, this is a reliable man. He wasn't the type of guy who gave flowers every day. But he fixed the kitchen faucet, changed my oil, and always rolled my toothpaste from the bottom. After 2 years of dating, we got married. The wedding was modest, in his parents' garden in Dallas. His mother, Jennifer, was a lovely woman, but very quiet. His father, Walter, was the complete opposite. Walter was ex-military, then opened a chain of auto repair shops. He was tall, gray-haired, with a voice that boomed even when he whispered. I immediately loved him like a father. Mark used to joke about it, saying I wanted to be Walter's wife more than his. We laughed. The first 3 years of marriage were good. Not perfect, but good. We had a rhythm. I worked a lot, he worked a lot. We were planning to have kids, bought a house in the suburbs with a big fence for a future dog. We got the dog, a golden retriever named Bart. Everything was going according to plan. Problems started in 2019, when Mark was promoted to vice president at his company. He started taking business trips to Houston twice a month. I didn't suspect anything bad. He talked about his new assistant, Emma. She's just a kid, Claire, she's 22, fresh out of college, he'd say. I saw her photo in the corporate yearbook. A pretty blonde with huge eyes and a smile that looked like she was permanently on vacation. I felt a pang of jealousy, but told myself I wasn't going to be that jealous wife. In early 2020, right before COVID, Mark changed. He started watching his weight, bought new cologne, and stopped eating my cooking, saying he had a gluten intolerance. Mark, who had eaten mac and cheese at 11 p.m. his whole life, suddenly became a vegan. It was strange, but I chalked it up to a midlife crisis. The lockdown made everything worse. We were stuck at home together, and I saw him constantly texting someone on his phone. He never locked the screen, but he always angled it so I couldn't see. One night, I woke up because his pillow was cold. He was standing on the balcony, whispering into the phone. I miss the smell of your hair. My heart sank into my shoes. But I didn't say a word. Instead, I became a detective. I started gathering evidence. It was a slow, humiliating process. I checked his email, the password was Bart123, stupid, but it was clean. Then I checked the Uber Eats purchase history on his account, our shared account, and I saw orders from expensive sushi bars in Houston on days when he said he was working late at the office in Austin. In Houston, Carl, a 3-hour drive, I called his office. I pretended to be his wife, said I forgot which hotel he was staying at. The secretary, unsuspecting, said, "Oh, Mr. Thompson hasn't gone to Houston for 2 months. All meetings are on Zoom now." So, he was driving there on his own. For her, I found her Instagram profile. Emma, that same, just a kid. She posted stories with views from expensive hotels, captioned, "Secret vacation with my secret man." In one photo, there was a reflection in the window. A man's hand with the watch I'd given Mark for our 3rd anniversary. I had sold my old Fender guitar to buy that watch. I couldn't sleep. I cried in the shower while he watched TV. I called my best friend, Stacy. Stacy, being a divorce lawyer, said, "Collect everything. Every receipt, every photo, every message. Don't show emotion. Hire a private investigator." I hired a detective, an older guy named Hank who smelled of cigars and cheap coffee. Hank was brilliant. 2 weeks later, he brought me a folder of photos. Mark and Emma at the Four Seasons in Houston, kissing in the elevator, holding hands in the park, buying furniture at West Elm. Furniture for their new apartment. I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and flipped through those photos. Something inside me died, but then, strangely, the pain was replaced by icy clarity. I remembered that when we signed the prenup, his idea, because he had a family trust, I'd insisted on an infidelity clause. Mark had laughed and said, "Honey, you're the only woman I'll ever need." In Texas, infidelity can affect asset division, especially if it's proven. And I had proof. I decided not to cause a scene. I decided to play the long game. But fate, as it often does, played a cruel trick on me. A week before I planned to meet with a lawyer, Mark's mother, Jennifer, died. A stroke. Sudden. I was genuinely sorry. I loved that woman. Mark cried on my shoulder for 3 days straight. He was devastated. In those days, he didn't text Emma. He was my husband again, the one I'd married. I almost changed my mind. Almost. At the funeral, I saw Walter, his father. He looked broken. He'd lost his wife after 35 years of marriage. I went to hug him, and he whispered in my ear, "Claire, you're the only ray of light in this damn day. Thank you for being here." I burst into tears. At the wake, while Mark was talking to relatives, Mark's Aunt Margaret came up to me. Margaret was always a scandalous woman everyone disliked. She'd had 3 glasses of wine and said to me, "You know Jennifer wanted to tell you something before she died, right? She found some documents. About that girl from Houston. She wanted to tell Mark to stop before it was too late, but she didn't get the chance." I felt a chill run through me. Even his mother knew. 3 days after the funeral, I was sitting in the living room sorting through Jennifer's things. Mark asked me to help. I found an old shoebox. Inside were letters. Not from Mark. From Jennifer to her sister, written 20 years ago. I didn't want to read them, but my name was on an envelope. No, not my name. The name, Claire, was written on the back. I opened it. It turned out Jennifer kept a diary in letter form. And in one of them, dated 1998, she wrote, "Walter cheated on me again. With his secretary. I don't know how to go on." His son, Mark, saw them together. He was 12 years old. Poor boy. I read it 3 times. Mark knew his father cheated on his mother. And he grew up to be exactly like him. But that wasn't all. In another box, in a Ziploc bag, were DNA test results. Dated 2010, between Walter and Mark. I'm not a biologist, but even I could see, the probability of paternity was 0%. Mark was not Walter's biological son. I sat on the floor among someone else's belongings and laughed. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. This whole family was a lie. Did Jennifer cheat on Walter in revenge for his affairs? Or did it happen earlier? I didn't know. But now I had a trump card that no one suspected. I didn't wait. The next day, I hired the meanest divorce lawyer in Austin, a woman named Pamela Voss. Pamela looked like a bird of prey. Thin-rimmed glasses, a sharp nose, and she never smiled. She looked at my evidence on Emma and said, "We'll strip him down to his underwear. And what are these papers about the DNA? It's not relevant to the case, but keep them to yourself. Blackmail is a crime, but information is power." I decided not to blackmail. I decided to put on a show. I asked Mark to come home early on Friday. I made his favorite dish, lasagna, even though he had a gluten intolerance, He came home tired, kissed me on the cheek. I said, "Mark, we need to talk about Emma." He went pale. He didn't deny it. He said, "How did you find out?" And then he started talking. He talked for 20 minutes. About how I worked too much, how I was cold, how Emma understood him, how he was unhappy, how it was a mistake, but he loved her. The classics. I listened. Then I put the folder of Hank's photos on the table. Printouts of the Uber Eats orders, screenshots of texts I'd finally hacked into. The password was Emma 1998. I said, "I want a divorce. I want the house, I want Bart. I want half of your 401k, and alimony. And I want you to leave tonight." He freaked out. Started yelling that I was a devil, that I'd set it all up. I said, "If you don't sign the papers Pamela sends, I'll send these photos to your boss." Corporate ethics, a relationship with a subordinate, you know? He left, packed a bag and drove to Houston. To Emma. The divorce took 4 months. It was the dirtiest 4 months of my life. He hired a lawyer who tried to paint me as crazy. His lawyer claimed I was emotionally unstable, because I worked as a pediatrician and, I quote, "get too attached to other people's children." Pamela tore them to shreds. In the end, I got the house, the car, the dog, 60% of the joint savings, and alimony for 3 years. The judge, an older woman, looked at Mark with such contempt that he shrank. But the sweetest moment came a week after the final hearing. I called Walter. Not for revenge. For the truth. I invited Walter to dinner at a restaurant that serves a great steak. He came alone, in a nice suit, but he looked older. We ordered wine. After the second glass, I said, "Walter, I know Mark isn't your son." He didn't choke. He didn't drop his fork. He just looked at me and said, "I know. And I know you know, because you found Jennifer's letters. She wanted to leave them for you." I was stunned. "You knew? Always?" He nodded. "I found out when Mark was 15. I did the test because of the blood type. Jennifer was AB, I'm O, and Mark turned out to be A. It's impossible." I made a scene. She confessed she'd slept with her ex a month before the wedding because I cheated on her at my bachelor party. It was an act of revenge. We decided not to tell Mark. I raised him as my own. Loved him as my own. But blood always comes out. Mark was always selfish, like his biological father who left Jennifer when she was pregnant. Walter cried. I took his hand. I said, "Walter, I'm so sorry. You deserved a better wife." And he replied, "No. I deserved the cheating. I cheated on her for years. We destroyed each other, then tried to build a family on the ruins. It didn't work. But you're different. You're honest. And Mark is a fool for losing you." I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the desire to hurt Mark the way he'd hurt me. I said, "Walter, come over to my place. I'll bake an apple pie. You like apple pie, don't you?" He smiled for the first time in many months. It wasn't sexual. At first. For the first 3 weeks, we just talked. I learned that Walter was an amazing conversationalist. He'd read all of Stephen King, he could fix any engine, he played the harmonica. He was gentle and attentive. He'd come over with flowers, but not as a suitor, as a friend. He helped me paint the fence. We walked Bart. One rainy evening we were watching an old movie, Kramer vs. Kramer, The Irony. I was crying. He hugged me, and then he kissed me. I didn't pull away. Neither did he. The next morning, I woke up with a horrible thought. I just slept with my ex-father-in-law. It sounded like a script for a cheap Lifetime movie. But then I thought, well, why not? I wasn't married to Walter. Mark was an adult. Walter wasn't his biological father. But legally? In the eyes of the world? We decided not to tell anyone. It was our secret. But secrets have a way of getting out. 2 months into our relationship, I ran into Mark at a grocery store. He was with Emma. Emma was pregnant, big belly, glowing with happiness. Mark saw me, and his face twisted. I was dressed well, in a new dress, with a new hair color, dark chestnut. I looked 10 years younger. He walked up to me. "You look good," he said. "Thanks. Your wife looks pregnant." "Congratulations," I said, in an icy tone. "She's not my wife. We're engaged," he said, and there was a strange note in his voice. Regret? Anger? "Oh, engaged. Cool. Well, I had to go. Bart's waiting for his walk," I said, and left. But at home, a surprise awaited me. Walter was sitting in the kitchen, looking at his phone with an expression I couldn't read. He said, "Mark called me. He said he saw you at the grocery store. And he asked why you're wearing my mother's ring on your finger." I looked at my hand. The ring. Jennifer's mother's ring. Walter had given it to me for my birthday as a friendly gesture. It was very delicate, with a small sapphire. I'd forgotten to take it off. "What did you say?" I asked, holding my breath. Walter smiled. For the first time, I saw in his eyes that same fire he probably had when he was young. I told him, "Because she's my fiancé, son. Congratulate your stepmother." I was floored. "You told him we're getting married? We haven't even talked about a wedding. Claire, I love you. I don't want to hide anymore. Marry me. For real," he said. And I said, "Yes." Mark's reaction was nuclear. He sent me 43 voice messages, each longer than the last. He called me a whore, a gold digger, said I always wanted his father. Emma messaged me on Instagram, "You're sick. You destroyed our family." I replied, "Honey, I destroyed your family? What about the 4 seasons?" She blocked me, but the most interesting part was yet to come. Remember Aunt Margaret, the one who liked wine? She found out about our engagement and was furious. But not at me, at Mark. She called a family council. Yes, they had a family council, like in The Godfather, but funnier, and declared that Mark was a disgrace to the bloodline. She also mentioned that she always suspected he wasn't a real Thompson. How did she know? I didn't tell her, but Walter, it turns out, had told his other sister, not Margaret, about the DNA test 10 years ago. And she, naturally, told everyone. Mark found out he wasn't Walter's biological son on the same day I announced the engagement. Imagine the shock. Your father, who isn't your father, is marrying your ex-wife. Not even soap operas could come up with something like that. He called me, crying. Actually crying. He said, "You took everything from me. My family, my father, my reputation. Wasn't the money enough?" I replied, "Mark, you took 3 years of my life, fed me lies, made me question my own worth. I didn't take anything from you. You lost it all yourself." And Walter is the man you'll never be. He hung up. We got married 6 months later. The wedding was small, 20 people. From the Thompson family, only 2 came. Walter's sister, the one with the secret, and Aunt Margaret, who brought a bottle of tequila and said, "You earned this, girl." The rest were my colleagues, Stacy, and Walter's family from his mother's side. Mark didn't come, but he sent a gift. It was a box. Inside was a broken apron that said, "Best cook in the house," the same one I used to wear when I cooked lasagna for him. And a note. "Hope you're happy with Daddy." Choke on it. I burned the apron in the backyard grill to applause from the guests. After the wedding, Walter and I left for a trip to Italy. 2 weeks of wine, pasta, and sex on the beach. I felt like a teenager. I was 34, he was 58. But the age difference didn't feel like anything. He was energetic, romantic, and most importantly, he never looked at his phone during dinner. When we came back from the honeymoon, I learned that Emma had given birth to Mark's son. They named him Walter Jr. Yes, she named the child after my husband. A psychological blow? Or Mark's attempt to win back his father's favor? I don't know. But Walter was unfazed. He said, "That's his child, not my grandson. My blood doesn't flow in his veins. But if that child wants to know me when he grows up, I won't refuse." I admired his generosity. In his place, I would have told Mark to go to hell. But then something happened that changed everything. One day, a woman came to my clinic with a child. The child had symptoms of a strange allergy. I was examining him and happened to glance at the mother's chart. Her name was Linda Stevens. I didn't recognize her at first, but then she took off her sunglasses. It was her, the girl from the photo. No, not Emma. Another one. The woman Walter had an affair with 10 years ago. That secretary. I recognized her from an old photo I'd seen in Jennifer's letters. My heart skipped a beat. I did the exam professionally, prescribed treatment, and as she was leaving, I asked, "Linda, you used to work at Thompson's auto shops, didn't you?" She went pale. "How do you know? You're that Claire." "Yes, I'm Walter's wife." She gathered her things and tried to leave, but I said, "Stay. Please, I have nothing against you." That was before me. Linda sat back down and cried. She told me everything. Walter wasn't the only one cheating. Jennifer knew about Linda and used it to blackmail Walter into signing over half the business to her. The Thompson marriage was a battlefield. Linda was just a pawn. Walter dumped her as soon as Jennifer got her share. I went home and asked Walter about Linda. He didn't lie. He said, "Yes, I was an asshole. I hurt a lot of people. But I'm trying to change. For you." I believed him. Because people change. Or was I blind? Time will tell. A year passed. I was happy in my marriage to Walter. We bought a lake house, got another dog, a corgi named Theo. I changed my last name to Thompson. Ironic, right? A Thompson again, but a different one. Work at the clinic was good. Meanwhile, Mark went bankrupt. Emma, it turned out, wasn't just a pretty blonde, but also very talented at spending other people's money. She convinced Mark to invest all his savings into some startup making vegan energy bars. The startup went under 6 months later. She left him, took the child, and moved to her mother's in Florida. Mark was left alone, without a job, without money, without family. He sold his car, lived in some room in a boarding house. I heard this from his former friend, who worked at the same company. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He called Walter and asked for money. Walter sent him a check for $5,000 with a note, "For therapy. You're sick, Mark. Not in your body, but in your head." Mark tore up the check and returned it by mail. Remember that DNA test I found? I kept a copy. One fine day, while sorting through old papers, I noticed something strange. At the bottom of the document, in fine print, was the lab's information. I called the lab, in Chicago, and asked for a reanalysis, saying I was a relative. They still had the old data. I paid $200, and they sent me a full report. It turned out Jennifer wasn't just AB, she had a rare subtype. And Mark's biological father wasn't an ex-boyfriend, as she'd said. The DNA matched a sample in their database. And it matched Walter's brother, Richard, who died in 2005. I read it 10 times. Mark was the son of Walter's brother, not Walter. Jennifer slept with her brother-in-law. Then pretended it was a random man. Why? Because Richard was married, and it would have destroyed the family. I didn't tell Walter. It would have hurt him too much. But I realized one thing. This whole family was a toxic dump. And by marrying Walter, I had stepped into the center of the madness. But here's the funny thing. Walter rewrote his will. He left me 70% of his fortune, and he was very rich. The chain of auto shops was worth about $12 million. The rest he split between charities for veterans and Mark. Yes, he left Mark 5%. He said, "He's not my son by blood, but I raised him for 35 years. He'll remain my son in my heart. But you are my family. You chose me when no one else would." The story is coming to an end. Right now, as I write this, I'm sitting in the living room of our lake house. Walter is fixing the boat at the dock. Bart and Theo are running on the lawn. There's an apple pie on the stove. Yesterday, I got a letter from Mark. A real paper letter. He writes that he completed a rehab program, that he has bipolar disorder that went untreated for years, and that he's sorry for everything. He's not asking for money. He's asking for forgiveness. And he says he wants to come to Christmas dinner. As a son, Walter said, "Invite him. This is my house, and if he comes in peace, he can stay." And I said, "No. Not this year. Maybe in a year. I'm not ready to look at him knowing he wanted to destroy my life." Walter sighed and said, "You're right. You're the boss in this house. And you know what? I really am the boss. Me, that same girl in sweatpants who was late for a date. I won. Not because I got revenge, but because I stopped being a victim." Many will ask, "Claire, aren't you afraid Walter will cheat on you? He's a serial cheater." I'll answer, yes, I'm afraid. But we have an agreement, total transparency. Phones without passwords, location sharing always on, and if he cheats, I'll leave. And I'll take everything. Pamela Voss has already prepared the prenup for the second marriage. I'm not that naive girl anymore. As for Emma, she's apparently started her own Instagram promotion business and is now selling courses on how to marry a millionaire. Ironic. And Mark? Mark got a job at his father's auto shop. A regular one, as a mechanic. Walter gave him a chance. I didn't object. Sometimes I see him when I visit Walter at the office. He lowers his eyes and walks away. We don't talk. I guess this is what they call karma. Or just life. Thank you for reading. Reddit, you've been my therapy. P.S. Some asked about Mark and Emma's child, Walter Jr. I secretly checked his photos on Emma's social media. He looks like Mark. And he has my eyes. No, just kidding. He has Emma's eyes. But he's very cute. I hope he grows up better than his parents. P.P.S. My birthday is next month. Walter bought me a Fender guitar, exactly the same one I sold to buy Mark's watch. Now I play it every evening. And that's the best revenge of all, being happy.